They called him an atheist, though he wrote about God, a traitor, though he sought truth, a heretic, though he was more honest than any believer. Spinoza, a philosopher feared more than armies. His name became synonymous with danger. Spinozist meant enemy of the church, the state, morality. Descartes renounced his ideas before death. Galileo fell to his knees before the Inquisition. Spinoza did not retreat a single step. By day, he earned his living grinding lenses for microscopes and telescopes, helping people see the infinitely small and infinitely large. By night, he polished something more important, tools for understanding reality without religious illusions. His works were published anonymously, passed from hand to hand as contraband, but changed the world. The story of a man the world rejected, but who conquered time. And in this video, we will break down into molecules the entire philosophy of this great thinker. So, my friend, don't switch off. We're beginning our journey. Part 1. The Rise of a Radical Thinker. The transformation of Benedict Spinoza from a promising scholar in the Jewish community to one of Europe's most provocative philosophers is a fascinating tale of intellectual upheaval. Spinoza was born in 1632 in Amsterdam's Portuguese Jewish enclave. He was raised during the apex of the Dutch Republic, where religious traditions mingled with commercial growth and political innovation. His family, part of the Sephardic Jewish community, had fled the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions. This history brought with it both traumatic memories of religious persecution and a rich tradition of philosophical and scientific inquiry. This environment was key to Spinoza's development as a thinker, providing him with deep insights into religious teachings and a growing doubt towards religious authority. From a young age, Spinoza shone academically, showing promise that he might someday lead his community. At the congregation's Talmud Torah school, he stood out in subjects such as Hebrew, Latin, and the complex study of the Talmud, essential components of Jewish education. His teachers probably envisioned him as a future steward of the religious traditions that had supported Jewish communities through years of hardships and migrations. However, Spinoza's curiosity pushed him beyond Jewish teachings to the new philosophical and scientific trends sweeping across Europe. He dived into the works of Descartes, Hobbes, and the emerging mechanists who were replacing outdated Aristotelian ideas with mathematical logic and material explanations. He also engaged with Renaissance humanists who analyzed biblical texts as they did classical works. This broad inquiry clashed with established religious views. Emerging science sought to explain the natural world through universal laws, dismissing divine intervention or supernatural causes. New philosophical ideas questioned fundamentals such as substance and free will, challenging traditional theology. Perhaps most troubling were the new approaches to Scripture that suggested the Hebrew Bible was crafted by human hands over time, rather than being a direct message from God. For someone like Spinoza, committed to logical thought and truth, these discoveries created an inevitable conflict between reason and religious doctrine. The breaking point for Spinoza came at age 23. On July 27, 1656, the Jewish community in Amsterdam declared an exceptionally severe excommunication against him. The decree was drastic, invoking every curse in the Torah and forbidding anyone to interact with him, conduct business with him, read his works, or even approach him. While the details of his offenses weren't specified, the band suggested serious heresies mirroring ideas Spinoza would later articulate. He was likely already expressing beliefs that would define his legacy, rejecting the soul's immortality, denying a personal God, and questioning the divine origins and continued relevance of Jewish law. Rather than attempting to reconcile with his community or temper his views, Spinoza embraced his excommunication as an opportunity to explore his reasoning freely. Released from the obligation to conform to his community's expectations, he pursued his philosophical explorations without restriction. He relocated to Rheinsberg, near Leiden, where he could quietly develop his ideas. To support himself, he became proficient in lens grinding, earning a modest income and gaining practical knowledge in optics, critical for the advancing fields of astronomy and physics. Spinoza found the perfect mix of activities in Rheinsberg, combining hands-on work with exploring deep philosophical questions. He fully immersed himself in crafting the philosophical ideas that would define his career. He handled several projects simultaneously, each one addressing significant philosophical dilemmas from distinct angles. One such work focused on enhancing the intellect and explored how people can reliably grasp reality. Meanwhile, his short piece on God, man, and his well-being offered an early sketch of the metaphysical and ethical concepts he would later expand on in ethics. His take on Descartes' philosophies not only demonstrated his command of contemporary philosophical thought, but also hinted at his developing ideas. All these endeavors paved the way for his grand masterpiece, Ethics, where he planned to construct a comprehensive philosophical system from foundational principles. It's tough to overstate the sheer audacity of Spinoza's philosophical groundbreaking. Instead of simply tweaking existing ideas, he proposed a total rethinking of the fundamental ways in which people understood themselves and the world around them. He aimed to dissolve the traditional boundaries between concepts like creator and creation, sacred and secular, freedom and necessity, mind and body, and the individual and the universal. He imagined everything as part of a single, infinite substance, with countless expressions, a new perspective that could unravel long-standing philosophical puzzles and provide a practical guide for human well-being by nurturing reason and transforming negative emotions into positive ones. However, this bold thinking had significant costs. Spinoza spent much of his life distanced from his family and previous social circles, communicating with a few intellectual peers mainly through letters. Due to the controversial nature of his ideas, his works often had to be published anonymously or after he had died. He refused academic positions, prioritizing his independence and affirming his ideas, which he knew would conflict with the established authorities. When he died in 1677 at the young age of 44, likely from lung problems related to his lens-making work, his philosophical legacy continued to challenge and inspire long after. His friends quickly worked to publish all his writings while protecting themselves from accusations of heresy and rebellion. Part 2. The Revolutionary Metaphysics. Spinoza unrolls this mind-blowing idea while he's distanced from the Jewish community in Amsterdam. His big breakthrough was the thought that everything real is underpinned by a single source, which he labeled as substance monism. This bold claim, which equated the traditional idea of God with nature itself, went against the grain of the accepted belief that the universe was made up of multiple substances, some divine and others created. Spinoza's insights both amazed and unsettled people as they replaced the old complex notions with a simplified understanding. To back up his substance monism theory, Spinoza developed a logical framework that dissected the contradictions present in the metaphysical views supporting multiple substances. He kicked things off by defining substance as something that exists all by itself and can be grasped without needing anything else, implying that a true substance is self-sufficient for existence and comprehension. From this standpoint, different substances can't have the same basic attributes because if they did, they'd be the same substance rather than distinct ones. Without shared characteristics, these substances would be unable to interact, as interaction requires a common thread. This leads to an impossible situation where substances are isolated with no explanation for the evident connections found in nature. The sensible conclusion, then, is to accept there's just one substance with limitless characteristics taking on various forms. This single essence is what religions call God, but logical thinking shows it's the same as what science sees as nature. This idea, famously called Deus sive natura, or God or nature, goes beyond just swapping labels. It signifies a deep rethinking of what we deem divine and natural, blurring the lines between creator and creation, between the sacred and the ordinary, between what's supernatural and what's natural. God isn't some separate being who tweaks the universe with miracles. Instead, God is the very essence and being of the universe, an infinite source of creativity present in every part and process of nature. So, exploring nature scientifically becomes a philosophical journey into understanding God, and getting to know God means delving into nature's true essence. This shifts how we view divine causality. Traditional thinking likened God to a craftsman who intentionally molds the universe based on divine intent and foresight. Spinoza nixes this idea of voluntary creation for something he calls geometric necessity, suggesting that everything in existence naturally follows from divine nature as inevitably as the properties of a triangle follow from its definition. Just like a triangle can't have more or less than 3 sides, reality can't include anything beyond what is or work under rules other than those of natural processes. Therefore, the world isn't some haphazard creation, but rather a necessary result of divine nature. Everything that exists must exist. All events happen as they should, and anything absent from reality is necessarily missing. Now, if you absorb this notion that everything is predetermined, it doesn't just lead to heavy philosophical chat, it affects all aspects of life and our understanding of the world. If nothing's left to chance, the classic idea of divine providence, where God's actively arranging everything with a purpose and responding to prayers, basically loses its value. Similarly, the traditional idea of miracles, those unusual acts contradicting nature's laws, doesn't hold up, since there's no otherworldly place for such acts to come from. What religions often see as miracles might just be natural events that surprise us because we don't fully grasp them. And when folks believe God's answering their prayers, it's actually the psychological and social changes in the people praying that lead to those results. Looking at this through a naturalistic perspective doesn't mean these experiences lose their spiritual significance. Rather, it brings their focus to the here and now, rather than to something beyond our world. The most surprising part might be how this approach seems to reject common ideas about free will and moral responsibility. If we're all just part of one massive, endless reality, with everything naturally following a divine plan, then our choices might be as fixed as a planet's path or a tree's growth. That feeling we have of making choices, it might just be because we don't understand the real reasons behind our actions. But let's not jump to conclusions. Spinoza isn't saying that doing good or bad doesn't matter. Instead, he suggests looking at ethics through a naturalistic lens. It should focus on whether our actions come from our genuine nature or are influenced by external factors. True freedom isn't about avoiding what's predetermined. It's about aligning with what genuinely represents us, rather than letting outside forces twist our true potential. This new understanding of freedom is crucial to grasping what Spinoza has to say about ethics and politics. Part 3. The Architecture of Reality. We explore Spinoza's approach to the daunting challenge of understanding how a single, boundless substance can manifest as the various things and processes we observe in the world. He crafted an ingenious framework that organizes reality into different levels, while maintaining the notion that, at its core, everything stems from one singular substance. The crucial components in this arrangement are what he called attributes and modes. These concepts help illustrate how this infinite substance can appear in the physical world without losing its essential unity amidst the diversity. It's a logically solid system that robustly explains everything in nature. Attributes are the fundamental ways we can perceive and understand this substance. While the substance itself is infinite with countless attributes, we humans can only comprehend two: extension and thought. Extension deals with space, time, and movement, areas covered by physics. Thought encompasses everything related to the mind and logic, the realm of psychology and reasoning. It's important to remember that these aren't different substances. They're simply distinct perspectives of the same core substance, like using two languages to describe the same idea. Each attribute has its own complete set of rules, yet neither tells the full story alone. So, whenever something occurs in reality, it can be explained in both physical terms, as a mode of extension, and mental terms, as a mode of thought. But these aren't referring to separate worlds. They're merely different angles on the same event. Within each attribute, this substance expresses itself through an endless variety of modes. These range from universal principles, like the laws of physics or logic, right down to specific, temporary entities. The infinite modes are those that directly and continually follow from what each attribute is all about, like motion and rest for extension, or logic and inference for thought. These rules are universal as they apply everywhere and eternal, because they don't change. Then you have finite modes. These include rocks, plants, animals, and everything else we see and experience, along with thoughts, feelings, and ideas in our minds. They're all interconnected in complex ways, composing the natural world as we know it. Spinoza suggested we view the substance, its attributes, and modes like a text translated into different languages. Just as you can express the same idea in English, French, or German without altering its meaning, the substance manifests through extension, thought, and other attributes without being confined to any single form. And much like how a book makes sense through the interconnections between words and sentences, this core substance reveals itself through the relations between finite modes. Each mode is part of a larger network, like words in a sentence, and can't really stand alone. So, the entire structure of different modes within any attribute perfectly embodies the essence of the infinite substance, similar to how an accurate translation captures the spirit of the original text. This arrangement resolves many of the classic philosophical riddles that used to puzzle thinkers. For instance, the age-old question of how finite, limited things can exist alongside an infinite being isn't really a problem anymore. Once you understand that finite modes aren't separate entities but specific ways the substance displays its infinite nature, things start to make sense. Also, the debate about how mind and body, despite being fundamentally different, can still interact isn't mysterious either. Mental and physical phenomena are just different facets of the same underlying reality. The challenge of how universal laws can apply to particular events without erasing their uniqueness is solved when we realize that those laws are the infinite ways the substance expresses itself through finite modes, creating all the unique entities and events. Essentially, Spinoza demonstrates how these apparent contradictions arise from mistakenly dividing parts of reality that are actually just aspects of a greater, unified whole. However, this neat metaphysical framework also presents new questions that continue to challenge philosophers grappling with Spinoza's ideas. So, if we see attributes as just different mental concepts about one substance, does that suggest these distinctions only happen in our heads rather than being true of the world? Could this mean that Spinoza's philosophy is more about thoughts than about actual reality? But if these attributes represent real aspects of existence, does that make the substance more like several things at once, conflicting with the notion that it's a single entity? Then there's the issue of finite modes supposedly reflecting infinite substance. If that's true, why are they bounded and temporary instead of having the same limitless, eternal nature? Also, if these finite modes are merely manifestations of the infinite substance, how do they manage to exert the cause and effect influence Spinoza claims they do in his philosophical framework? These questions probe deep into the heart of Spinoza's metaphysical ideas, highlighting just how challenging it is to make sense of the relationships between limitless and limited, eternal and temporary, and what's necessary versus what happens by chance. Part 4. Bridging Mind and Body, Confronting Descartes' Puzzle. Way back in the 1600s, thinkers were struggling to figure out how the mind and body, consciousness and matter, and thoughts and physical forms were connected. Descartes suggested that they're two totally different things, one being capable of thought but without physical substance, and the other being physical but not capable of thought. His idea respected the obvious differences between mental and physical entities and aligned with the Christian belief in a soul that could exist independently from the body. However, this approach made it really hard to explain how these two realms could possibly interact. How could a mind without substance get a body to move, or how could a body generate thoughts and emotions? Then Spinoza came along and turned the conversation on its head. He proposed a groundbreaking solution by reimagining the link between mental and physical realms. According to him, the mind and body aren't separate entities that somehow communicate, but rather two viewpoints of the same existence. Every entity has a physical aspect and a mental aspect, which aren't divided but are merely different perspectives of the same underlying reality. It's similar to describing a circle by its shape or by how it's formed with a rotating line. They're just separate ways of seeing the same concept. For Spinoza, the mind and body aren't fastened by some mystical force. They're interconnected by the fundamental nature of reality itself. This approach resolves the old mind-body conundrum, which only seems like a problem if we assume the mind and body are truly distinct. Once we see that they are two sides of the same coin, asking about their interaction becomes illogical, much like asking how a circle's shape relates to the math that defines it. Mind and body don't interact because they're not separate entities. They maintain a natural correlation where events in the mind reflect events in the body. When the body experiences something, the mind registers a shift, not because one causes the other, but because they represent the same happening in two different ways. Spinoza explained this by saying that the sequence of ideas mirrors the sequence of physical events. Just as one event can trigger another physically, an idea follows another in this perfectly mirrored process. This isn't wizardry, but rather the reality of how these aspects of one substance, thought, and extension operate together. The riddle of how the mind and body work together begins to clear up. It's not about matching two separate chains of events to make them fit together. It's about realizing there's just one sequence explained in two distinct manners. This insight transforms our view of human nature and how we expand our understanding. Our minds are reflections of our bodies, so the mental functions mirror the body's mechanics. A more intricate and well-structured body results in a more capable and nuanced mind. Conversely, if something's off in the body, the mind's abilities face limitations or distortions. This demonstrates that nurturing the mind and body isn't about tending to two separate tasks, but about cultivating both as parts of evolving our true selves in the vastness of existence. Activities that enhance the body's skill in complex and coordinated tasks also improve the mind's ability to think clearly and reason. On the other hand, activities that restrict physical abilities similarly impede mental capacities. This alters the old idea of the soul commanding the body into a perspective where mental and physical development are intertwined in our growth as humans. The way we perceive the world around us is largely influenced by the way our bodies engage with it physically. The extent of what we know hinges on how well our bodies interact with the environment. When things from the outside world affect our bodies in ways that make our experiences richer or more intricate, our minds can understand those things more clearly. On the flip side, if these interactions throw our bodies into a state of confusion, our minds end up picking up a jumbled understanding, which says more about the limitations of our bodies than it does about the essence of those external things. This means that acquiring knowledge isn't just a mental game isolated from real-life experiences. It's closely tied to honing our body's ability to interpret the world clearly. So, learning isn't about escaping our physical nature, but about becoming more attuned to it. Part 5. All right, let's get into the heart of what Spinoza has to say about how we understand and perceive the world. He's pretty smart about it, breaking down human knowledge into different levels, each with its own perks and pitfalls. Instead of thinking of knowledge as something you either have or don't, He imagines it more like a ladder with 3 steps, each one offering more clarity and insight. This idea fits into his broader view that humans are just small parts of an infinite puzzle, always capable of growing and getting better with practice and discipline. For Spinoza, climbing these steps isn't just a mental workout, but a way to transform yourself, helping you become freer, happier, and more empowered. Let's kick off with the lowest step, which he calls imagination. This is the knowledge that comes from our everyday experiences, what we see, hear, and encounter by chance. It's more about appearances than reality. It's where we often get muddled with misunderstandings because it's based more on luck and personal viewpoints rather than careful thinking. Like when you make snap judgments about people or places based on limited experience, or go along with what's trendy just because everyone else is doing it, that's this kind of knowledge. Now, imagination isn't entirely worthless. It lays the groundwork for deeper insights and helps us navigate daily life. But don't be fooled. Depending solely on imagination is a recipe for mistakes and superstitions. Next up, we have reason, which is the middle step. This is when you dig deeper into things that are always true, like universal laws. Reason goes beyond specifics, giving you a broader perspective. It's about understanding what must be true, not just what seems to be true. You use this kind of thinking when grappling with geometric proofs, understanding natural laws, delving into logical ideas, or exploring moral codes through thorough analysis. It's way better than imagination because it's not limited by personal biases or cultural norms. Instead, it aims for truths that hold up no matter the time or place. Although reason provides the foundation for science and morality, it's not the ultimate end. It overlooks the detailed nuances of individual cases, handling universals somewhat abstractly. Finally, we reach the top step, intuition. This is about grasping the true essence of specific things, not just in broad terms, but in their unique, individualized context. Unlike reason, intuition doesn't plod along step by step. It's like an immediate aha moment where you see how a broad concept manifests in a particular instance. You understand the inherent necessity of how each individual thing springs from the nature of everything. God, according to Spinoza. It's like not just knowing that humans are thinkers, but seeing how that plays out in someone specific. Or realizing not just that love is joyful, but seeing how it blooms in a particular relationship. That's the rich, direct understanding intuition gives you. This type of knowing combines the vividness of imagination with the logical depth of reason, offering both a universal truth and specific importance. Through intuition, we can see things from an everlasting perspective, viewing them as necessary reflections of an infinite substance instead of just the results of limited causes. Moving from imagination to reason and finally intuition isn't just about collecting more facts, it's a change in how we think. With imagination, our mind mostly reacts to outside stimuli, linking things based on timing and habits rather than pure logic. With reason, we get more proactive, conducting thorough investigations and sharpening our skills in abstract and universal thinking. Through intuition, our mind merges creative insights with solid logic, helping us see core realities beyond mere feelings or reasons. This journey boosts what Spinoza calls the mind's thinking power, or its capacity to generate a lot of well-rounded ideas at once. It's not just about learning more stuff, but reshaping our consciousness to align better with unity and integration principles. Each stage of knowledge brings its own emotions and real-world impacts. Imagination tends to paint life as a jumbled and unpredictable mix, stirring up feelings like hope, fear, love, hate, joy, and sadness, which shift along with the roller coaster of life's events. On the flip side, reason lays out how things are linked together, creating more stable emotions, like the calmness that comes from understanding or the resolve you find in knowing what must be done. Then there's intuition. It sees things through the lens of eternal truths and gives rise to what Spinoza calls the intellectual love of God. This is a kind of joy that's personal yet detached, letting you admire things for what they are without getting too hung up on how fleeting or useful they might be. This change in emotions isn't just a byproduct of gaining more knowledge. It's actually a crucial part because our emotions show how we connect to the ideas and matters at hand. So, when we aim for a higher kind of knowledge, we're also aiming for a richer emotional life and a stronger bond with everything around us. Part 6. At the heart of Spinoza's view of human nature is this cool concept called conatus. Simply put, it's our basic drive that's the essence of everything. But don't narrow it down to just why people behave a certain way or a biological fact about living beings. It's more of a universal rule that influences everything, from tiny particles to living beings, right up to complex social systems. Understanding conatus bridges the gap between Spinoza's cosmic ideas and his practical advice on human life and society. The conatus principle suggests that anything that exists does so with a desire to continue being itself. It's not some add-on, it's the essence of the thing. For example, a rock has a conatus that keeps it as a rock, resisting breaking apart. A plant aims to grow and reproduce, dealing with environmental changes to stay plant-like. For us humans, conatus drives us to learn, love, create, and connect according to our unique human nature. But here's the twist. Conatus isn't about aiming for a specific end goal or inherent purpose. Spinoza tossed aside the idea of ultimate goals, focusing instead on the immediate causes that bring things into being. So, instead of aiming for an end goal, a thing simply acts according to its nature, in the present. Each thing's conatus is about how it interacts with its current conditions and what's around it. There's no overarching plan, nor is it all random. It's about the infinite universe expressing itself through each unique entity within its specific context. To grasp the idea of conatus, you need to see both the general rules that apply everywhere and what makes individual beings unique. With humans, conatus reveals itself in our complex blend of thought, emotion, and action. At a basic level, our conatus looks like survival instincts common to other life forms, staying alive, adapting, and reproducing. But, thanks to our ability for deep thinking, symbolic communication, and collaboration, our conatus goes beyond mere survival, driving us toward fulfillment in distinctly human ways. Of course, attending to our basic needs is crucial for thriving, but there's more to it. Our drive compels us toward experiences and connections beyond mere survival. When our conatus is based on clear understanding and positive emotions, it can lead to richer lives through personal growth and community engagement. We're on this path to better understand ourselves and the world around us. The goal isn't just creativity or efficiency, but building relationships grounded in mutual respect and shared objectives, not power plays or exploitation. This pursuit leads to what Spinoza calls active emotions. These feelings don't just pop up from outside influences, they come from our true selves. We feel joy as our capacity for action and thought grows. Love emerges when we see others and the world as enhancing our existence. Desire becomes about engaging with activities and relationships that promise further growth. These good vibes create a cycle boosting our ability to think straight and act well, making us feel more empowered and content. On the other hand, when we're driven by unclear ideas and passive emotions, it leads to stunted growth and poor social cooperation. We latch onto things we can't control, form opinions with shallow understanding, and build relationships based on neediness, rivalry, and manipulation. This struggle is what Spinoza calls passive emotions. These feelings shine a light on our vulnerabilities rather than strengths. Sadness comes when our capacity to act and think worsens. Hatred rears up when we blame others for our shortcomings, and fear zeroes in on potential threats to our attachments. These negative vibes create a cycle, weakening our ability to think clearly and act effectively, leading to frustration and a sense of powerlessness. The aim here isn't to squash our innate energy or zest for life. That would go against what makes us human. Instead, it's about steering that energy into ways of expressing ourselves that truly uplift and enrich our essence. Part 7. Let's jump into Spinoza's thoughts on emotions. It's honestly one of the brightest insights in philosophy about how we feel. When you think about emotions, you might imagine them as these odd little intrusions that mess with our clear thinking. But Spinoza turns that view upside down, suggesting that emotions are as normal and understandable as anything physical or biological. He doesn't brush off their importance. Instead, he gives us tools to figure out where these emotions come from, what they're doing, and how we can adjust them for a happier life. His ideas are full of insights that help us make sense of emotions and provide wise ways to handle them with strength. The core of Spinoza's take is the idea that emotions aren't just separate from our thoughts. They are a type of thought. Specifically, they're thoughts linked with feelings about changes in our ability to act or make things happen. If something gives us a burst of energy and capability, that's joy. But if something drags us down, we feel sadness. When external things interfere with us, we might feel love or hate, depending on whether they lift us up or drag us down. Looking ahead to the future brings hope and fear, joy and sadness mixed with uncertainty. Every emotion is a version of these basic feelings, shaped by our desires, current situations, and our self-awareness. Spinoza makes a key distinction between passive and active emotions. Passive emotions hit us when external forces are in control. They often leave us feeling lost or powerless. When things don't go our way, we get angry. Unexpected events cause fear. Seeing others with what we lack leads to envy. Not meeting others' expectations results in shame. These passive emotions can cloud our thinking and make it hard to act effectively. trapping us in a cycle of just reacting to outside influences. While they can have their uses, they often keep us chained to whatever external factors dictate our happiness and self-worth. Active emotions, however, come from our understanding and creativity. This is when we express our core selves, rather than just reacting to limits set by external situations. We feel true joy when we're learning, creating, and connecting in ways that strengthen us. Love grows for people, things, or ideas that encourage us to expand and deepen our connections. Our desires focus on realizing our full potential, not just fleeting pleasures. Active emotions lead to clearer thinking and better actions, creating cycles that empower us to control our lives. Shifting from passive to active emotions isn't about brute force, but understanding the world better. Changing how we see everything, including ourselves, is gradual work. We build better ideas over time. Once we get why things happen, we're less likely to react with unnecessary anger, fear, or desire. Instead, we handle situations calmly and effectively. Realizing what we truly value helps us rely less on others' approval and find happiness in our actions and relationships. When we see ourselves and others as part of a bigger picture, we foster emotions that connect us, not divide us. This emotional growth is both a personal journey and a social one, as our feelings are shaped by our interactions and our connections teach us more about ourselves. When folks focus on spreading good vibes, they create a space where others feel encouraged to do the same. But if negativity takes over the mood, it's a lot trickier for anyone to grow emotionally. That's why personal growth and making a community better are connected. Both need a shift from reacting on autopilot to living with more intention and purpose. Communities do well when they're rooted in understanding, teamwork, and a common aim for everyone's well-being. These environments allow people to tap into their full potential and enjoy the perks of personal growth. On the other hand, places where there's distrust, ongoing drama, and competing goals are likely to drum up negative feelings, putting a damper on both personal progress and group harmony. Therefore, becoming emotionally wise is about making a conscious effort to build social settings that support, not block, our capacity for clear thinking and imagination. Part 8. Spinoza takes ethics in a fresh direction compared to the typical emphasis on external demands like duties or rules. Instead of asking what God or society expects, he flips the usual narrative and wonders what lifestyle helps humans genuinely flourish. What traits, actions, and relationships boost our capabilities as thinkers and social creatures instead of holding us back. He doesn't get rid of moral judgment entirely, but bases it on evaluating what really enhances human well-being. Spinoza avoids using lofty, disconnected standards that may not fit our true nature. His ethical approach is both deeply insightful and down-to-earth, offering practical advice for developing the character and understanding needed for authentic happiness and achievement. At the core of Spinoza's ethics is his belief that humans are driven by a desire to understand, create, and connect with other thinkers. Unlike other ethical theories suggesting there's a conflict between self-interest and moral duty, Spinoza asserts that true self-interest involves caring for others and engaging in lifestyles that collectively nurture our potential. Instead of sacrificing personal interests for others, he emphasizes that our true interests are fulfilled within a society characterized by mutual understanding and cooperation, a society that embraces reason and creativity. Someone who tries to succeed by dragging others down ultimately harms the very social foundation they need for their own success. Conversely, those who create conditions for everyone's prosperity pave the way for their own growth. Thus, enlightened self-interest and genuine morality go hand in hand, though this becomes evident only when we truly understand our nature and situation. In Spinoza's ethical framework, the vital virtues enhance our capacity to think deeply, act inventively, and form meaningful relationships. Courage pushes us toward real goals despite challenges, while temperance keeps us from getting distracted by fleeting pleasures or material attachments. Generosity enables us to recognize and support others' true needs, and justice guides us to treat people based on their actual contributions and needs, rather than random preferences or biases. Wisdom ties all these virtues together, equipping us with the insight to navigate what fosters human flourishing in complex and shifting environments. These virtues aren't about restricting natural desires, but rather about developing our nature when guided by clear understanding instead of confused thoughts and knee-jerk reactions. Building character isn't about suppressing our nature. It's about realizing its full potential. According to Spinoza, the pinnacle of human flourishing lies in what he describes as the intellectual love of God. This love signifies the ultimate leap from basic imagination and reason to profound, intuitive understanding. It is a love rooted in the mind, emerging from a clear grasp of our connection to everything, rather than an emotional tie to individual, limited things. This love targets God or nature, as it's not fixated on any finite object, but rather the infinite creative force expressed through all things, ourselves included. It's true love because it embraces our essential link with the source of all existence, without fear of an outside authority. When someone taps into this level of intellectual love, they reach a kind of fulfillment that doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's about understanding the deep inherent links that make up the essence of reality. It doesn't mean shying away from everyday problems. Rather, it means engaging with them through an understanding of their deeper, timeless significance. Spinoza's ethical vision isn't just about individual character formation. It also concerns how we shape our society and govern our actions. Human well-being heavily depends on social collaboration, which needs a collective commitment to living thoughtfully and creatively. This means that ethics is both a personal and societal journey, driving us to establish systems and routines that support these shared aims. So, if you're aiming to live ethically, you can't overlook things like education, income distribution, political engagement, or cultural development, because these areas influence the setting where individuals strive to achieve their full potential. Personal virtue and advocating for social justice are not conflicting pursuits. They complement each other, and both are crucial for nurturing an environment where people can excel according to their innate abilities. Spinoza's ethical perspective envisions a future where personal growth and societal progress are interlinked, each enhancing the other in a continuous cycle of empowerment and insight. Chapter 10. Spinoza's Political Vision, Democracy and Human Freedom. Spinoza's political ideas are directly linked to his understanding of human nature. He was a forerunner in championing democracy and the free flow of ideas. Instead of starting with grand theories about natural rights or social agreements, Spinoza homed in on what kind of systems encourage rational thinking, creativity, and teamwork. By doing so, he came up with ideas that were groundbreaking at the time and remain impactful, like supporting people-led government, embracing diverse religious beliefs, and critically examining traditional forms of authority. Spinoza's political thought isn't just about describing how power works. It's about envisioning a better way to enhance human happiness. Central to his ideas is the link between personal strength and communal power. Success isn't just about individual talent and effort. The social environment is a major player. Even the most skilled person achieves little on their own, but within the right community, ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things. Supporting individual talents means creating systems where cooperation thrives, rather than getting bogged down in conflict and competition. We should judge political systems not by some abstract ideal, but by how effectively they foster collective, rational, and creative growth. According to Spinoza, the best form of government harnesses the myriad skills and perspectives of its citizens, striving for goals rooted in shared human values while celebrating each person's individuality. Looking at Spinoza's vision for government, it's clear he supports democracy, though his version isn't quite like ancient or modern interpretations. Whereas earlier thinkers worried democracy meant chaos due to uninformed masses, Spinoza argued that large, diverse groups are more likely to reach wise decisions than small groups of so-called experts. This happens in part because varying viewpoints highlight more issues, and public debate pushes people to prioritize the greater good over self-interest. Contrary to modern theories focusing narrowly on how votes are counted or decisions recorded, Spinoza sees the true power of democracy in what citizens learn and become by taking part. Engaging in discussions about public matters sharpens people's reasoning, enhances decision-making abilities, and fosters cooperation, while also building a sense of connection to communal welfare. Democracy is about more than just smarter choices. It's about shaping citizens who contribute positively to society. A crucial aspect of Spinoza's philosophy is the connection between political and intellectual freedom. He argues that a government's strength and success depend on its citizens willingly supporting it, based on the clear understanding that the government serves their interests. If a government tries to maintain power by stifling ideas, spreading misinformation, or crushing opposition, it undermines the rational debate necessary for citizens to see its authority as legitimate. True political stability isn't about eradicating disagreements, but fostering an environment where people can express their views and where these views can be evaluated and incorporated into policy or logically refuted through open discussion. The freedom to think and express oneself isn't a luxury stable societies can afford to bypass. It's vital for ensuring citizens voluntarily stay engaged. Forcing uniformity of thought breeds resentment, dishonesty, and covert defiance, destroying any chance for genuine political collaboration. Spinoza's thoughts on the role of religion in politics highlight his broader aim of separating personal beliefs from public actions while maintaining strict standards for both. He asserts that governments can't really control personal beliefs since those arise from complex personal experiences and thoughtful reasoning that can't be coerced. What governments can and should regulate are actions affecting the broader community, regardless of their personal motivational beliefs. This implies religious practices should be permitted as long as they don't harm societal peace, and religious leaders shouldn't receive any favoritism over other citizens. The government's role when it comes to religion isn't about deciding which beliefs are correct or stopping people from practicing their faith. Instead, it's about ensuring that followers of different religions can coexist harmoniously, each playing a part in creating a society that's both fair and thriving. This means keeping a clear line between religious matters and political decisions, and firmly sticking to the principles that maintain this balance. Part 11. How Spinoza Saw Religion and Scriptures. Spinoza rocked the boat when it came to challenging traditional religious authority. Back in the day, questioning religious teachings was a risky move. It could get you banned or worse. But Spinoza didn't shy away from it. He used the same logical approach on religious texts as he did on natural sciences and math. His goal wasn't to get rid of religion, but to sift through it, keeping the genuinely spiritual and moral stuff, and tossing aside the superstitions and political junk that piled up over the years. His work distills religion into something fundamentally human, something you can examine through history and psychology without needing to follow old mystical beliefs blindly. Spinoza's thorough examination of the Bible chipped away at the idea that it was straight from a divine source. He pointed out that the Hebrew Scriptures were the result of human effort, with all sorts of edits and rewrites. Those books attributed to Moses, David, and the rest, they were actually stitched together later by folks with their own political and theological agendas. This doesn't strip the texts of their moral or spiritual value, but it does mean they're open to the same level of scrutiny we apply to any ancient writings. By seeing biblical authors as regular people speaking to their times, we can delve into their true meanings instead of just accepting the interpretations handed down without question. Spinoza didn't stop there. His views on prophets and revelation emerged from his naturalistic perspective. He didn't see prophets as divine mouthpieces. To him, they were individuals with vivid imaginations and strong emotions, painting a picture of justice and human responsibility through their words. Their influence wasn't about supposed divine communication, but their bold stances on morality and their pushback against the norms set by political and religious big shots of their time. Spinoza's view keeps the value in prophetic tales without needing to buy into miracles that contradict natural laws. It also shows us that today we can tap into that same moral depth and critical thinking without having to claim divine endorsement. Spinoza's critique of religion didn't just rethink Scripture. It shook up how society handles political power and the freedom to think for ourselves. For ages, religious authorities claimed divine rights to dictate beliefs, community operations, and even sciences. By highlighting that religious texts were human creations, Spinoza weakened these lofty authority claims, carving out space for free thinking and rational questioning across all areas of life. This doesn't mean throwing out everything connected to religious beliefs. Instead, it means examining all claims to truth rationally, regardless of any supposed divine origins. This approach promotes intellectual freedom, where no authority, religious or political, gets a free pass from being questioned or demands blind faith without evidence and reason. This mindset greatly influences education, science, art, and politics, since these areas thrive on challenging old ideas and embracing new ones. Spinoza's take on the moral and spiritual aspects of religion is more constructive compared to his criticism of its supernatural aspects. He suggests that beneath the complex theology and strict religious rules lie valuable lessons about humanity, moral duty, and genuine happiness. The core message in biblical teachings, when correctly understood, isn't a collection of metaphysical ideas about God or the afterlife. It's a clear moral lesson about justice and kindness in our treatment of one another. This ethical essence can be separated from its supernatural elements and appreciated for its wisdom without the need for faith in miracles, divine commands, or promises of otherworldly rewards or punishments. At its best, religion channels human capacity for love, generosity, and commitment to a greater good. At its worst, it can lead to superstition, intolerance, and political manipulation. The goal is to embrace and nurture the positive aspects of religious experiences while weeding out the harmful parts through rational critique and a strong understanding of history. Part 12. Miracles, Prophecy, and How Nature Works. Spinoza had a pretty controversial take on supernatural events when it came to understanding both natural and human history. Folks back in his time really believed that miracles, prophecies, and divine actions were key to religion and keeping society stable. But Spinoza argued these so-called miracles were either natural occurrences we hadn't figured out yet, or stories made up to sway emotions and politics. This view didn't sit well with religious leaders or even some scientists and philosophers who tried to blend their belief in natural laws with divine narratives. Still, Spinoza wasn't at war with religion. He was just super strict in applying his natural viewpoint to everything about humanity, even the stuff usually left for religion to tackle. His take on miracles was very much tied to his understanding of natural laws, which he saw as embodying God, or nature's, unchanging essence. If these laws show how the infinite reality has to express itself, breaking them would mean God going against God's nature, which Spinoza thought was just illogical. So for him, a miracle, a supernatural event that disrupts the natural order, didn't actually demonstrate divine power, but instead would contradict the idea of divinity. A God that performed miracles would seem less than infinite, acting on whims rather than being the timeless spirit that shows up in the regular patterns of the universe. True divine power, as Spinoza saw it, wasn't about breaking the rules, but in the profound complexity and unity in how the universe unfolds naturally. Getting to know God from Spinoza's viewpoint meant understanding the infinite power and intelligence expressed in natural laws, not defying them. The more science helps us untangle natural phenomena, the more obvious this becomes. To understand events that seem to defy natural laws better, we need to refine our methods for sorting real causes from imagined ones. When ancient texts talk about events that seem to go against nature, Spinoza thinks we should look for explanations rooted in nature that explain what happened and why people saw them as supernatural. Things like eclipses or earthquakes were often labeled as divine, especially in tough times when folks were more open to supernatural explanations. Naming these as divine forces wasn't about them being miracles, but was more a lack of scientific understanding and people's need for comfort in mystery. Nowadays, we can often pinpoint what triggered these events and understand why earlier generations might have found them otherworldly. This approach respects the moral and spiritual insights from old stories, while letting us analyze them logically. Spinoza's view on prophets follows the same thinking. He saw their visions as natural psychological processes, a blend of deep moral awareness and vibrant imagination, not messages from the divine. Prophets, like those in Hebrew tradition, had a knack for recognizing injustice, imagining better futures, and using powerful symbols to inspire change in their societies. Their power didn't come from a secret hotline to divine knowledge, but from the courage to tell leaders the tough truths about the gap between society's ideals and reality. Prophetic thought marks a huge step in moral understanding, showing how people can transcend the norms of their era to dream up ideas of justice that challenge power and privilege. Seeing prophecy as a natural human trait rather than a mystical gift lets people today develop their own moral insights and social critique without claiming divine endorsement for their views. The heart of prophecy isn't in claiming magical insights, but in human efforts to create fairer and more compassionate communities. Taking the supernatural out of our understanding of history and the world around us isn't just about religion. It touches the heart of how we think about and organize society. When we let go of blaming unknown forces for what we can't explain yet, it pushes us to find better ways to investigate and reason, slowly expanding our genuine knowledge. This sets up a cycle where each new scientific discovery narrows the room for superstitions, while sticking to superstitions holds us back from uncovering more natural causes. When political and religious leaders are unable to cloak their decisions in mystery or mystical reasons, they are obligated to provide logical explanations that the public can discuss and challenge. This setup fosters a more democratic and transparent form of governance in which power is based on persuasion rather than on unchallengeable, enigmatic authority. Therefore, stripping away the supernatural from our worldview isn't merely theoretical. It's a vital move towards creating societies that are based on freedom and rational thinking. Part 13. Let's dive into what Spinoza's got to say about politics. His ideas shake things up when compared to his contemporaries, Hobbes and Locke. Instead of seeing political authority as a big clamp that limits our natural freedom, Spinoza views it as a natural extension of our basic need to connect with others. Humans, on their own, aren't great at handling everything life throws at them. So, in Spinoza's view, a genuine political community springs up because people realize teaming up is essential for getting things done. This way of thinking about political obligation is more about amplifying what folks can achieve rather than tying them down. When it comes to natural rights, Spinoza doesn't see them as divine mandates. He links them directly to an individual's real-world power. Essentially, your rights encompass whatever you can actually do. So, rights aren't abstract moral declarations, but solid realities about what we can accomplish. In a state of nature, where rules don't exist, your rights are as expansive as your ability to act. Conflicts arise when people chase different goals and can't both win because resources and abilities are limited. These clashes get sorted out when the stronger party wins, or when people find ways to collaborate for everyone's benefit. The light bulb moment comes when people realize that working together is better than going it alone. That's the spark for political society. It's not about committing to high-minded principles, but about testing if these setups actually make it easier for everyone to achieve their aims.
For Spinoza, a government is doing well if it makes its people wiser, more innovative, and better at creating meaningful relationships.
To check if a government is doing its job, you don't look at whether it's sticking to age-old rules or if it came from some mythical social contract. You examine whether it genuinely enhances human lives, allowing people to reach their fullest potential through cooperation while valuing individual paths. People support this kind of government because it's in their best interest to preserve an environment where they can thrive. Spinoza also gives the once-over to other political setups. Take monarchies. He argues that piling all power onto one leader isn't a smart move, since their personal goals might not align with what's best for everyone. They might not understand or even bother with what the people need or what they bring to the table. Aristocracies spread power out a bit compared to monarchies, but still keep it among the privileged few. These elite folks often have interests not shared by the general public, and because they're somewhat disconnected, they might miss the mark when it comes to creating a flourishing society. On the flip side, democratic systems distribute power even more, pressing leaders to make policies that benefit all. Plus, these setups provide the best landscape for citizens to hone their critical thinking and cooperation skills. But democracies come with their challenges, like stopping the majority from overpowering minorities, all the while being inclusive and flexible. The solution isn't cutting back on democratic engagement, but encouraging traits that help people see they're all linked, with common goals that lead to everyone's success. Spinoza believed political freedom isn't living rule-free, but living under laws that reflect the collective wisdom, aiming for the greater good and not just for specific individuals or groups. Such laws don't curb personal freedom. Instead, they offer a predictable framework that lessens the fear of others meddling in personal ambitions and set the stage for teamwork that accomplishes what no one person can. Crafting these laws is an ongoing democratic discussion where citizens sharpen their reasoning, practical decision-making, and mutual understanding, feeding a collective intelligence that guides political moves. Participating politically isn't just about pursuing one's interests. It's a core part of human development, enabling people to embrace their nature as rational social beings. The ultimate level of political liberty is achieved when personal victories seamlessly contribute to the community's prosperity, thanks to a societal structure that ensures personal gains automatically uplift everyone else's welfare. So let's jump into part 14, which is all about education and how it's a game changer for society. Spinoza might not have penned a step-by-step guide on education, but his philosophy gives us some pretty solid insights into how folks develop their core skills and how societal frameworks either help or hinder this growth. He talks about 3 types of knowledge, which tell us that education is way more than just passing on info or picking up useful tricks. It's actually about changing our worldviews, guiding people to move from just following others to actually understanding and creating knowledge and values by themselves. This whole idea of education as a force for personal transformation doesn't stop at schools. It also includes all those social setups and cultural traditions that shape how we understand where we fit in the world and how we engage with it. This angle takes a critical look at teaching methods that squash human potential and suggests a vision for more effective learning. The goal is to encourage independent thinkers who can build fair and successful communities. At the core of what Spinoza thinks about education is his view on human development. He sees it as a journey where we get better at understanding ourselves and our surroundings. Kids start by using their imagination, forming beliefs based on what they see and experience socially, instead of relying on thorough exploration and logical analysis. Sure, imaginative knowledge helps them handle immediate tasks, but it also sets the stage for superstitions, biases, and wrong ideas that leave many adults mentally and emotionally stuck for life. According to Spinoza, education should aim to guide learners from just imagining things to reasoning, and eventually to an intuitive understanding that captures the essence of things in the bigger picture. This isn't just about stuffing more facts into our minds. It requires a profound reworking of our consciousness, structured by deeper insights and evaluation principles. Real education, then, means nurturing the mind while also shaping character. How we think is closely tied to our mental well-being, and our capacity for rational reflection depends on being free from negative emotions. The teaching strategies we use for this educational evolution should align with how human thought and feelings develop naturally. We shouldn't expect young kids to dive into heavy philosophical discussions when they haven't yet grounded themselves in real-life experiences and creative imagination. But at the same time, we shouldn't limit them to rote memorization that doesn't capitalize on their growing ability to think independently. A solid approach to education involves creating spaces where students can discover principles on their own through guided exploration, rather than just taking in what teachers and textbooks dish out. Teachers should be less like repositories of fixed knowledge and more like mentors who guide the learning journey, encouraging students to enhance their observation, analysis, and creative synthesis. The goal isn't to turn out replicas following traditional norms, but to nurture intellectual freedom and moral courage, allowing individuals to think independently while being open to learning from others. This means teaching students to critically analyze inherited beliefs and conventional authorities, including their own teachers and the education systems they are part of. Finally, the social aspect of education is just as important as the individual side, because we enhance our unique abilities by interacting with others who share our common humanity while showcasing different skills and perspectives. Learning communities truly flourish when they bring together people from various backgrounds, offering diverse viewpoints. Everyone gets the chance to contribute and encourage one another to dig deeper into beliefs and expand their knowledge. For this to happen, it's essential to create an environment of mutual respect and openness, where folks feel free to express their thoughts and questions without fearing ridicule or backlash. It's about mastering the art of healthy discussions and teamwork. This lets a group discover ideas that are beyond the reach of just one person. These social and cognitive skills aren't just for learning's sake. They're crucial in politics, too, as democracies thrive when people can discuss common challenges and still honor different viewpoints. So, personal growth through education and learning for active citizenship aren't competing with each other. They actually support one another helping drive personal and societal change. However, the broader context in which formal education takes place has a huge effect on its ability to truly promote human development. Schools in areas plagued by economic inequality, political oppression, or cultural prejudice often reflect these issues, even when teachers and administrators mean well. Children brought up in environments with few prospects for valuable employment, creative expression, or community engagement are unlikely to realize their full capabilities, regardless of school quality. Conversely, regions rich in economic, political, and cultural opportunities provide the ideal setting for schools to nurture individual freedom and critical thinking. Therefore, improving education and society goes hand in hand. Both must be addressed together for true success. The ultimate goal is to create a society where everyone can access resources and opportunities, unlocking their abilities for insight, innovation, and cooperation. Essentially, making education a basic right for all, not just for a lucky few. Part 15. Tackling Evil and Suffering. Trying to figure out why there's evil and suffering in the world is one of the toughest challenges any belief system or philosophy faces. Many religions often suggest it's because people don't always use their free will wisely, or it's part of a divine plan that we might not grasp. Non-religious perspectives might just say that these are simply parts of life that don't require any deep explanation. But Spinoza has his own spin on all this. He doesn't overlook the hardships people face and doesn't bring supernatural concepts into the mix either. Instead, he focuses on how misunderstandings and clashes among people lead to what we call evil and suffering, and how becoming wiser can help ease that pain. According to Spinoza, there's no such thing as evil that exists on its own. He views it in terms of how something fails to help people thrive or harms their growth, similar to his view on good. Problems pop up when different beings are all trying to survive and grow without thinking about how it impacts others, like animals, hunting, or people acting purely out of self-interest. Spinoza suggests that rather than just labeling these actions as evil outright, we ought to try to understand them better. Through understanding, we can work on reducing unnecessary battles and promoting cooperation, which calls for personal growth and societal systems that focus on the greater good. For Spinoza, human suffering mostly stems from desiring things we can't control or obtain, such as wealth or others' validation, leading to frustration and sadness. Without understanding why things happen, we end up with emotions like anger and fear, which weaken us. To suffer less, we need a better grasp of ourselves and our world, aim for realistic desires, and find our satisfaction internally, all while staying connected to the larger world. Spinoza also dives into how society contributes to evil and suffering. If societies prioritize competition for scarce resources over collaboration to generate more resources together, and if they distribute opportunities unfairly, this leads to more conflict. It stops people from realizing their potential to reduce harm and boost cooperation. If power is gathered by those with goals contrary to the common good, it leads to people exploiting each other rather than helping one another. In such scenarios, even those with good intentions might end up harming others to safeguard their own or their family's well-being. Meanwhile, those sticking to higher moral principles
might find themselves disadvantaged compared to those who don't shy away from deceit or force.
The solution isn't just about pushing individuals to improve, but about making systemic changes that promote cooperation and dismantle barriers that hinder building societies based on mutual respect and a dedication to human welfare. These changes are possible, benefiting everyone involved, but require collective action driven by a solid understanding of societal and human psychology.
Cutting down on the world's evil and suffering isn't some far-off dream, but an achievable goal if we can create better social structures, drawing insights from human nature. Spinoza's ideas aren't about eradicating all evil and suffering entirely. These challenges naturally exist due to our world having limited resources and conflicting interests. Yet, he highlights that many problems could be significantly eased by fostering wisdom, crafting more effective social systems, and offering education that encourages constructive participation in cooperative communities. We're not chasing after some kind of utopia without limits or conflicts. Instead, we're looking to nurture environments where people can flourish naturally, with reduced suffering and increased opportunities for creativity and fulfilling connections. This requires ongoing efforts from both individuals and society, guided by the best possible understanding of natural and social dynamics, accepting that our knowledge is always evolving and open to refinement, with new experiences and better analyses. In the end, facing the issue of evil and suffering isn't about throwing in the towel or ignoring what's happening around us. It's about constantly using our intelligence and empathy to confront the real-world problems of making our own lives and society better.
This is a task that calls for our minds to dive in wholeheartedly and our hearts to dedicate themselves fully to the happiness and safety of ourselves and those around us. Part 16. In Spinoza's philosophy, one thing that really stirs up debate is his take on the mind having an eternal side. He suggests that by diving into genuine understanding, people can tap into a kind of immortality. At first, it might seem like this doesn't quite fit with his belief in naturalism, which says everything is bound by time, just like all things in existence.
But Spinoza insists this eternal quality is just a natural result of delving into different ways of knowing and how these relate to reality's true nature. To get what he's saying, it's crucial to pay attention to how he separates time from eternity, and how he sees our individual minds linking up with the infinite knowledge of God or nature. He also talks about how reasoning and intuition can change how we connect with time and our finite existence. Interestingly, this isn't about giving us hope for personal life beyond death, nor is it saying everything ends when we die. Instead, it's a natural perspective where we engage with timeless truths, going past the usual line between living in time and existing beyond it. Spinoza's idea of eternity springs from a sharp distinction he makes between two ways of connecting with time. One is tied to our everyday life, and the other comes from deeper levels of understanding and being. Most of what we experience from day to day is in what Spinoza calls duration, which is just the sequence of events where finite things mingle and interact, driven by the natural ebb and flow of cause and effect. We grow older, needs arise and either get fulfilled or not, and relationships form and end, all while our lives travel down a one-way street that makes up our personal stories.
This life in time is very real and important, but it only reveals one side of our reality as parts of an infinite being.
By using our reasoning and intuition, we can see not just events in their regular flow, but also understand their eternal features, the patterns and core structures that define them beyond temporary appearances and events. These eternal dimensions aren't separate from our time-bound lives. Instead, they reveal deeper layers of the same reality, open to us through more profound kinds of knowledge. Our minds don't gain eternity by leaving behind our physical lives. Instead, they become eternal by learning to see finite things, ourselves included, through the lens of eternity, not just in passing moments. When we grasp things like math, logic, or scientific principles, we're touching on ideas that are eternal, since their truth isn't tied to any specific time or place. They're aspects of reality that don't change. When we recognize our true nature as finite beings within an infinite existence, we see not only our life's timeline, but also our eternal value as vivid expressions of a divine essence. The highest form of this understanding is what Spinoza calls the intellectual love of God, where we take part in the timeless activity of infinite existence, reflecting on itself through its finite forms. This doesn't mean running away from our limited condition. It's about deepening our understanding of it as it engages with universal truths and eternal processes. Our minds achieve a form of eternity, not by breaking out of boundaries, but by learning to think eternal thoughts, becoming part of infinite knowledge. This notion of mental eternity reshapes how we perceive personal identity and life's meaning beyond death. When the body ceases to exist, it's not the personal identity, with all its memories, desires, and connections, that survives. Instead, it's the eternal part of the mind that's all about embracing eternal truths. The gist here is that living forever isn't just something that happens automatically to everyone. You actually have to put in the effort to develop your reasoning and gut sense while you're alive. If you mostly spend your time just drifting off in daydreams or getting swept away by your emotions, you're not going to create anything lasting in your mind beyond your physical existence. But if you put your energy into gaining knowledge and nurturing emotions that come from a solid understanding, your mind can start connecting with eternal activities. This gives you access to a different sort of immortality, one where you become part of the timeless elements of reality. This isn't like the never-ending life religions often talk about, or the idea of total nothingness some people believe in. It's more about taking part in timeless happenings that go beyond individual boundaries. What's important to grab from this idea isn't really about soothing worries regarding life after death. It's more about changing how we think about living right while we're here. Understanding that the eternal aspects of our minds grow through acquiring knowledge and wisdom gives us more reason to dive into philosophy and ethics over just chasing quick thrills or collecting stuff. Knowing that our lives have a timeless value as distinct expressions of something infinite helps us find meaning without stressing about hitting certain milestones or being remembered in the future. Developing a profound love for God, viewed as the height of human action, can offer fulfillment that surpasses ordinary fears about dying and life's limits, which tend to bother those who mainly live through imagination and desires. Considering eternity
isn't about running away from our finite lives. It's more about embracing them with a deeper understanding of how they link to eternity. This idea is central to Spinoza's philosophy, illustrating how the growth of human knowledge and wisdom eventually leads to a kind of bliss that goes beyond typical life constraints while staying grounded in a natural view of human nature and the order of the universe. Part 17. Breaking down Spinoza's geometric philosophy. When you dive into the mature philosophical works of Spinoza, one thing that really stands out is his distinctive way of organizing everything. Instead of going the usual route of essays or dialogues, he sets it up much like a geometry class, starting off with definitions, moving through axioms and propositions, and guiding you through demonstrations step by step. This isn't just a peculiar choice. It reflects his strong beliefs about how philosophical ideas should be laid out. Spinoza was all about achieving real certainty on life's big questions. So, what's the method do for him? It provides a clear framework for reasoning based on simple truths, ensuring that emotions or fancy rhetoric don't muddy up the waters, which is something that often happens in debates. Plus, when you follow the logic, you begin to see how every truth links back to his main beliefs about existence. Understanding why Spinoza used this method and how it fits into his system is crucial if you want to grasp what makes his work so unique and valuable today, especially for those wanting to tackle big questions in a deeply systematic way. Spinoza was inspired to use this method because of his admiration for mathematics. To him, math was the real deal, a type of knowledge anyone could get behind as long as they used their reason. Unlike sciences that lean on observations that might change over time, math builds on certain definitions and axioms to arrive at conclusions that naturally follow. Its solid knowledge applies universally and builds clearly and consistently. Spinoza believed philosophy could be just as definite and structured, provided it was organized like math. This meant he needed to pin down the essential ideas and rules, not only for metaphysics, but also for ethics and politics, tracing every outcome through strict logical steps. His aim was for his philosophical system to hit home with people as naturally as Euclidean geometry, cutting through the debates and doubts that philosophy often encounters. This geometric method does more than just sort out thoughts. It also protects philosophical reasoning from getting twisted by stuff like emotions, bias, or wishful thinking. When philosophers use narratives or their personal stories to express ideas, it's easy for readers to be swayed by things that don't really relate to the core argument, like the writer's charm, emotional appeal, or how much an idea meshes with popular beliefs. By sticking purely to the logic and skipping the flair, this format helps keep such distractions at bay. It encourages readers to assess the strength of the argument at each stage, not based on who's putting it forward, or how eloquently it's expressed, or whether it aligns with their previous beliefs. This setup is perfect for true philosophical exploration, where the goal is to uncover truth rather than to persuade people or express personal or cultural opinions. However, there's a downside. This geometric approach can be tough for those more accustomed to conventional philosophy. The dense logical format in Spinoza's Ethics demands a lot of focus and deep contemplation. It's challenging, particularly if formal reasoning isn't your strong suit. With no narratives, examples, or clear links to everyday human issues, his work can feel pretty abstract and somewhat disconnected from real life. You can't truly grasp each concept without understanding how it connects to earlier definitions and proofs, so selecting parts at random can make you lose the full weight of the ideas. Because of this, some argue that the geometric method actually complicates sharing important thoughts, as it seems open only to those who are really adept in this arena. Others think Spinoza's choice to use this method represents an overly rigid and mechanical way of thinking, leaving out how imagination, emotions, and practical wisdom play roles in philosophical discourse. Despite these challenges, Spinoza's geometric reasoning style has left a significant mark on the development of later philosophy, inspiring steps to craft more detailed and coherent solutions to profound questions. This approach underscores how we can tackle philosophical matters with the same clarity and precision that distinguish the most reliable empirical sciences. It offers a framework for distinguishing true logical connections from those that just appear logical because of psychological or cultural leanings rather than being grounded in objective reasoning. This highlights Spinoza's knack for organizing deep philosophical ideas around a few basic principles. He uses logical thinking to flesh out more complex conclusions. Importantly, it reflects his conviction that through reason, humans can uncover philosophical truths, suggesting that intense study can resolve big debates instead of relying on personal opinions or cultural influences. The geometric method Spinoza uses is more than just a fresh technique. It embodies a strong belief in human reason's power to truly grasp significant truths about reality and our place within it. Part 18. Spinoza had a big impact on philosophy, covering topics from metaphysics to ethics, politics, and religion that people are still talking about today. When he first introduced his ideas, folks thought they were so risky that his works got banned all over Europe, and universities stuck to more traditional teachings. However, even those who weren't on board couldn't ignore that his ideas were both smart and gutsy. Over time, philosophers who might not have fully agreed with him still used his ideas to shape their own thinking. Throughout the years, people have gone back and forth on Spinoza, with different times finding new ways his work related to their specific issues. Back in the late 1700s and early 1800s, German idealists like Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel found an alternative in Spinoza's idea that everything is part of one substance, which stood against the dualism that Descartes had spread. They took this all-encompassing view and tried to solve the divide between things like subject and object, freedom and necessity, and the finite versus the infinite. Hegel, in particular, thought Spinoza was the first to really get the concept of the absolute, but he also pointed out that Spinoza didn't quite tackle how things change or fit into history. By diving into Spinoza's work, these thinkers came up with dialectical methods to blend his unified view with elements of change and history. The German idealists didn't just accept Spinoza's ideas outright, but rather adapted them to address the philosophical issues they faced. This reinterpretation of Spinoza's ideas continued through the 1800s and into the 1900s, as people started to get more interested in his natural outlook on human behavior and society. Thinkers like Feuerbach and Marx used Spinoza's materialism to critique idealist philosophy
and examine how society and material conditions shape human consciousness. Nietzsche saw Spinoza as a precursor to his own ideas about morality, turning away from divine rules to see human values as naturally developed. Freud noticed how Spinoza foreshadowed some psychoanalytic ideas, like how the unconscious can influence conscious thoughts, and the idea that understanding yourself better can lead to greater personal freedom.
This helped pave the way for modern approaches in psychology and sociology, which treat human actions as part of the natural world rather than something supernatural. Nowadays, Spinoza's ideas are still significant, especially in conversations about consciousness, the mind-body link, and emergence, key topics in today's philosophy of mind and cognitive science.
His comparisons of mental and physical traits predicted modern theories on how the mind's unique features come from but aren't completely explained by physical processes. How he talked about motivation and emotions influenced today's fields like neuroscience and embodied cognition, focusing on how desires and feelings are crucial in shaping behavior and thought. His view of personal identity as evolving patterns rather than static souls has fed into modern debates about identity, emphasizing change over fixedness. Environmental thinkers appreciate his view of humans as integral parts of nature for tackling ecological challenges, bridging the divide between people and nature, prevalent in industrialized societies. Political thinkers are also using his ideas on democracy and collective intelligence to explore new approaches to governance, concentrating more on the power of participation to instigate change rather than just counting up preferences. Spinoza still influences modern thought because he didn't just poke at a handful of age-old problems. He tackled them head-on with a broad and deep approach. Where many philosophers pick specific areas and don't really tie them together, Spinoza wove everything into a big picture, making sure that life's big questions all fit together. His ideas are a treasure trove for those philosophers today who are looking to solve the big puzzles of life, rather than focusing on just one random piece at a time. He combined serious thinking with practical usefulness, showing us that philosophy can be both clear and have a real-world punch. At the heart of his philosophy is a strong trust in reasoning to uncover truths, which is very different from just accepting things blindly or doubting everything. This view gives hope to those who see philosophy as a means to improve things. So, Spinoza's influence isn't just something from the past. It's a lively part of today's philosophical debates and remains important for tackling the intellectual and practical challenges we face now. Part 19. Why Spinoza is still relevant today. Even though Spinoza pieced together his philosophy way back in the 17th century, his ideas are surprisingly helpful for dealing with some of today's toughest intellectual and real-world problems. He had an insightful way of viewing human nature which clicks with what today's cognitive science and brain research are uncovering. Moreover, his ideas on democracy give us fresh ways to think about getting people more engaged in politics and making smarter decisions as a group, which are key for today's democratic debates. When you look at environmental concerns, Spinoza offered a way of seeing our place in the world that strikes a balance. Instead of seeing nature as just something to use or as some untouchable marvel, he gave us a way to find better solutions for our ecological challenges. A big part of his philosophy revolves around human happiness, pointing us towards cultivating our reasoning, encouraging positive emotions, and strengthening teamwork with others. His approach offers a new way to think about personal freedom and collective responsibility, which can lead to healthier individual and societal growth, moving away from pure self-interest or strict collectivism. What's interesting is that some of the latest research in neuroscience and psychology backs up what Spinoza was saying about the link between our minds and bodies. He described a kind of interplay between them, which fits nicely with theories today explaining how the mind arises from the brain without being limited just to it. His views on how emotions connect thoughts and body reactions mirror recent studies showing the complex cocktail of mental analysis, physical responses, and activities within our emotional lives. His concept of conatus, or the natural drive within us, relates closely to today's understanding of intrinsic motivation, indicating that fulfilling core psychological needs like self-reliance, skill, and social ties enhances well-being and success. Spinoza also noted that the way we know things is based on our mental engagement with the world, which ties into current ideas like embodied cognition. This concept sees thinking as something influenced not only by internal processes, but also by external and social environments. These links between Spinoza's ideas and modern research suggest his understanding of the mind and emotions touches on some fundamental truths that remain relevant well beyond his time. In the area of environmental ethics and thought, Spinoza provides a rich source for building better ways of connecting with nature. Seeing humans as just one part of a vast natural system contrasts with using nature merely as a resource or treating it as an untouchable sanctuary. He proposed that humans thrive by getting to know and work with nature, not by trying to dominate or retreat from it. His view that individuals are deeply connected with their environment fits with current ecological knowledge about the interconnectedness of life and viewing organisms as components of larger systems. His ethical approach isn't about following external rules, but about enhancing who we are naturally. This perspective helps informing ideas about environmental stewardship that stem from a profound understanding of our own needs rather than external moral obligations. Modern environmental campaigners draw on these cues to promote solutions to ecological challenges that emphasize reshaping our thinking and organization over simply relying on technological fixes or strict regulations. Modern political thinkers digging into democratic participation have been really inspired by Spinoza's ideas on collective intelligence and how democracy can change society. Spinoza noted that when folks actively engage in a democracy, it sharpens their thinking skills and leads to smarter decisions as a whole. This notion echoes in today's deliberative democracy, which emphasizes how being involved in politics can educate and evolve people, not just reflect their preferences. He believed that empowering individuals and groups strengthens both, offering a fresh perspective on democracies that nurture personal growth while enhancing team efforts. His take on political freedom was more about self-determination than just getting rid of restrictions, providing different options in current debates over libertarian and communitarian ideals. Those working on efforts like participatory budgeting, citizen assemblies, and deliberative polling see in Spinoza's work new ways to enhance both personal capacity and group intelligence
through democratic experiments. For Spinoza, communities formed naturally through human connections rather than being forced from the outside, suggesting ideas for grassroots organizing to complement or replace top-down management approaches. Furthermore, Spinoza's view on what it means to thrive, which involves knowledge, managing emotions, and building relationships, offers a fresh perspective against the usual story of consumerism and competition, a narrative often leaving people lonely, anxious, or unfulfilled despite material wealth. He pointed out that negative emotions stemming from misunderstanding create cycles of frustration and conflict, shedding light on today's social issues such as addiction, depression, political divides, and environmental damage. To him, personal growth was about changing one's mentality rather than gathering wealth, and this idea feeds into education, therapy, and spiritual practices that aim for lasting happiness. His insights into the mutual support between personal and societal well-being suggest that both personal growth and political change aim towards creating conditions where people can truly evolve. In our current world, where societies are searching for sustainable, meaningful ways of living amid increasing complexity and interconnection, Spinoza's philosophy offers useful guidance away from just accepting the status quo or dreaming up unattainable, idealistic plans that ignore basic human strengths and boundaries. Part 20. When you pause and look at everything we've discussed about Spinoza, it's not a single clever idea or smart argument that grabs your attention. What's really awesome about Spinoza is how he's woven together all parts of his philosophy into one smooth masterpiece. Every piece of his thought doesn't just sit there on its own. It actually lifts up and supports all the others, creating a strong philosophical framework that's so well put together it's still solid under today's examination. Spinoza's ideas tackle the huge questions about life, what we can really know, our emotions, what's right or wrong, and how society should function. His philosophy isn't just some brainy puzzle either. It's all about his core belief. Everything around us is linked. And to truly understand life, we got to see how these links work together rather than treating each piece like a separate thing. This big picture thinking isn't just a life philosophy. It's more like a guide for living better, offering timeless wisdom that's still useful today, just like it was back in Spinoza's day. So where does it all kick off? With his idea of substance monism. Basically, the notion that there's only one substance that makes up everything. According to Spinoza, all we see and experience are just different shapes or expressions of this one limitless substance. He challenges the traditional splits like God versus the world, mind against body, or freedom versus fate that had stumped thinkers before him. Thanks to his view, humans aren't seen as outliers to the natural rules, but part of an ever-evolving nature. This perspective equips us to understand and cooperate with the natural and social world instead of opposing it. When it comes to understanding, Spinoza's all about evolving from relying on what's handed to us by others to discovering eternal truths that reach beyond immediate experiences. This journey from basic imagination through logic to intuitive insights isn't just about getting book smart. It transforms us at a deep level, bringing more freedom and happiness. Gaining knowledge strips away misconceptions that cause needless suffering, opening the door to deeper insights and creative connections.
This path of learning is both personal and shared, since our thoughts grow in community, and as we progress, our social ties strengthen. This mirrors the larger connection between our individual lives and the universe itself. Zooming in on emotions, Spinoza turns the way we handle feelings on its head, showing how we can rechannel them. Instead of reacting in haste and losing grip, we can steer our emotions into creative efforts that enhance personal development and teamwork. Emotions, for Spinoza, are a piece of nature, shifts in our capacity to act. By getting wise about our feelings, we don't just get a grip on what we go through, but also learn to build emotional resilience and insight. The distinction between passive and active emotions shines light on how our basic human drive can either tie us down to external factors or set us on a path to independence and effectiveness. This mindset shift is tied to how we learn and get to know the world. Active emotions are powered by clear ideas, while passive emotions hint at a lack of understanding about ourselves and our environment. Blending our thoughts and feelings leads to what it means to truly thrive as a human, where reason and emotion aren't locked in conflict, but beautifully intertwined. Spinoza's ethical and political thought paints a picture of how our individual growth and social change flow together, rooted in our natural tendency to be rational, imaginative, and community-oriented beings. His practical take on ethics says that understanding what truly boosts our well-being comes from rational observation, not superstitions or societal customs. He further argues that genuine democracy should boost personal development and collective knowledge by actively engaging citizens in governance, which not only transforms individuals, but yields better outcomes for all. His insights into education and social change depict how individual and societal advancements can fuel each other, creating a positive cycle of empowerment and learning that uplifts both people and their communities. Spinoza, in his wisdom, highlights that our best selves emerge in communities where mutual recognition, collaboration, and a shared dedication to reason and creativity prevail. What makes his work stand the test of time is its ability to show that deep philosophical reflection can yield insights and practical wisdom that transcend eras and cultures. His naturalistic approach offers practical tools for addressing today's challenges in fields like neuroscience, environmental ethics, politics, and personal development, problems he could never have anticipated. By weaving together metaphysics, theories of knowledge, psychology, ethics, and politics, Spinoza exemplifies an all-encompassing approach to tackling life's major questions without becoming narrow or chaotic. His belief in human reason as a path to true knowledge, alongside his conviction that understanding and collaboration lead to prosperity, offers an alternative to harsh authority and fuzzy relativism, continuing to inspire those who champion rational solutions. A central lesson from Spinoza is that personal satisfaction and social justice are not conflicting goals, but are connected, implying that bettering oneself and society go hand in hand in the pursuit of meaningful living. The unity in Spinoza's thought isn't merely about past contributions. It calls us to engage with the limitless creative force that comes to life in finite beings capable of love, understanding, and transformative change. Exploring everything Spinoza set forth, we see how a single remarkable mind
conceived a view of reality and human potential that still challenges, inspires, and guides wisdom seekers today. His lasting influence demonstrates that the greatest philosophy is not just a scholarly exercise, but an active, transformative journey engaging deeply with life's fundamental questions, altering our self-perception and how we decide to live.